everyone, and welcome to this episode of Down the Garden Path. I'm very excited to have Ernest Williams back from Aquascape. We've done several shows over the years, and it's one of my favorite topics is to talk about ponds, pondless water features, and all things water in your garden and yard. So welcome to the show, Ernest.
Oh, it's great to be here. Good to see you again.
And I should let everybody know, Ernest has been a territory manager at Aquascape for over 20 years, so he knows what he's talking about. And he manages the East Ontario and Quebec area of Canada for Aquascape. And it is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And as a landscape designer, I put many different kinds in my yards, in my designs. Sometimes they go for it, sometimes they don't, but it depends. I think I was talking to you before the show about the trends, and you were saying that Pondless, that I think most people don't understand really what that is kind of being as a popular item.
It is. It's a neat way of incorporating water into the landscape, into the design that minimizes the amount of maintenance. And as well, some people have there's questions about safety and other things like that around a pond, but there's also time and other things, and maybe you're going for more curb appeal, or just the enjoyment that just want the sound of water, not necessarily maintaining. We'll call them a water garden. Really, a pond tends to be there's plants and fish and other things to maintain. A pondless feature, because the homeowner can get the sound of water without the open pond, and so we're seeing a push towards that, or a desire for that. And sometimes it's just a way, like designers love to put water into projects. People are drawn towards water and you want water. And when you see water in, whether it's a home show or other things like that, you're drawn towards it. Or if there's, that's the reason golf courses all have water features and when you're going on a vacation, the greatest vacation spots are usually beaches or areas that have water, Niagara Falls, other places like that. So naturally, I think as humans, we're drawn towards water.
Cottages, that's right. That's why people want cottages to be on the water.
Nobody's having a cottage.
Nobody's having a cottage in the field, right?
Yeah, and if they do, they're going to add a water feature to that spot. So we like to see it. And some people, would love to have water, but okay, I've got I'm not at the cottage all the time, so I don't necessarily want a pond that needs to be running all the time. So if I have something that I can turn it on when I get there and enjoy the sound while I'm there, and the look and the feel of water and the birds and other things, that draws animals and other natural elements to your property or other things. So pondless water features, and that includes fountainscapes, just bubbling features, urns or stack slate features that we have, or basalt columns or other things like that, as well as an actual disappearing stream that kind of works its way down into a bed of gravel. And you can plant those things up as well, because there is water available, so water plants all appreciate that. And the same mechanics of how we build a pond also goes into how the pondless is built, as far as trying to mimic what nature would do. And so you've got the water moving. It doesn't just pop out of the ground. It's working its way, whether you kind of berm up around the waterfall and let it work its way down. So it gives the illusion that the water has eroded its way through the ground and through the rocks, and you've got your meandering stream, and it just disappears and continues on its way to the aquifers down below, kind of giving that illusion. So it really lends itself to some great artistry that homeowners and especially contractors, professional landscapers, can incorporate into a design. So
yeah. And as far as the pondless, so it's our listeners understand there's no standing water, right? So there is, of course, water, and we can hear water, we can see water, but it's more it's recirculating.
That's correct. Yeah. So the way they're designed is there's basically a basin of water that's below the gravel, and it can be sized. I guess you want as much water that would be in the stream, at least twice as much, so that when the pump draws the water from there, and it fills up the waterfall and it works its way back to the basin. You want to make sure that you have enough water in there, so the water kind of, we'll call it in motion, matches what's in the basin. So you've got twice as much in the basin, so you're never running dry. And then what the neat thing is, you can add maybe 3 times as much or 10 times as much really in that basin. So you can incorporate, downspouts into it, and becomes more of a stormwater management system, or kind of rainwater harvesting way of collecting water that can be used in that water feature, and it minimizes the amount of runoff and other things that leave the property. But yeah, so basically the water sits in the basin, works its way up to the waterfall, and then flows back down to the basin, curves and meandering its way down. We like to say, trying to avoid naturally, water kind of works its way down. It doesn't typically work like a fire hose, where it just blasts its way back down. It kind of meanders its way down. Sometimes it does, depending on the elevation and other things like that. But I think for the typical backyard, or giving that kind of meandering stream look, is what a lot of people like. And it provides some sound, maybe a couple of drops as far as the waterfall working its way back down into that. So there's lots of artistry and ways to make it match the property and the landscape.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And that can be used with the fountain features as well, right? I love the spillway bowls. That idea, I thought that was one of my favorites, and I love that you created a mini one, because the other one looked big in the pictures, but then when you get them, they're really big. So, although I have installed them for clients, and they look amazing, and really, when you look at the scale of the yards, it does fit, right?
That's right.
But I do like the
introducing that smaller mini one. It allows it to tuck into almost any yard, really. You're right, because the other ones, they're 40 inches, and the basin part was 40 inches, and then the spillway was 32 inches. So it's a big footprint for a small feature. So now we've got it's a 21-inch and a 19-inch spillway, and then it sits on the aqua basin. So it can be its own standalone feature, or you can incorporate it into a pondless waterfall, where that could be the start of the waterfall and it kind of works its way down a stream. Or again, it could be its own feature sitting on, we'll call it the aqua basin, which is basically a big square tub with our large one is almost 4 by 4, roughly 4 foot by 4 foot, and about 16 inches deep. So that sits below the ground. So it holds about 100 gallons of water. So you're less topping up of the feature, and then there's enough water in there for it to recirculate that water. And so then outside of the evaporation and the splash, there's a lot of water for that feature. And then our smaller one sits on it's about 30 inches, 30 by 30 aqua basin, similar design, but 12 inches deep. That gets dug into the ground. You can put decorative rock on top to hide it, so you don't really see any of the components that you're working with, and you just see the rocks and then the feature on top. And the pump sits in there, and that circulates the whole feature.
Right. And then it's for Canada, and then the only issue is that in the winter, so it does have a long season, right? Because you just need to take the pump out before it freezes.
That's right. Yeah, and the best thing is to take the pump out. And then we do have some covers for the different features, because you do want to protect them from the elements.
Okay.
We always recommend to leave water in the basin. The basins are designed similar to like an ice cube tray, if you will. They won't crack or freeze, but the ice will just form inside them.
Okay.
If you remove the water from it, then it loses the weight of that. And then you end up with, as the ground freezes around it, it'll actually heave it and pop it out. So you leave the water in, let the ice form around the feature, but cover the feature so that snow and ice don't actually settle on whether it's the basalt columns or the spillway bowl. They're light enough that actually you could remove them and bring them into the garage somewhere heated or outside of the elements, and then just reinstall them the next year. So there's ways of minimizing winter, but the big one is removing the pumps so it doesn't have an opportunity to freeze in the basin.
That's right.
Yeah,
Okay. So a little bit of maintenance, but
that's
nothing
right.
really compared to a full-blown pond.
Right.
Um, and when you were talking about when we talk about the pondless feature, like, and you were talking about like it like a river, so that's more natural, right? You're using large rocks, medium sized, like a variety of rocks. So you're really trying to
That's right.
mimic like nature in your yard.
That's right. Yeah, working, as I say, working with Mother Nature, not against her. But the other thought of just, yeah, having it to scale so that it matches, it looks like it's natural.
Right.
It's not contrived. If they're, all the same sized rocks, or if it's all just stacked flagstone, that you don't really see that. When you're doing your research, I'll call it, when you're going on hikes and stuff like that, what you see is, rocks have dropped in on each other, and they're the bigger ones are sitting on the smaller ones, which lock them in place. And if you
Mhm.
can mimic that in your design, then it does make it look more natural, plus a little safer too, as you put larger boulders and smaller ones. And then if you're kind of giving the story of the water as it travels, then a larger boulder indicates the water didn't erode that and actually had to, that gave a reason for it to curve. And so you put a larger boulder in one spot and allow the water to yeah, traverse another path
Mm.
and then work its way back down, and maybe another boulder. But it also, for visually for the eye, it draws you to kind of what's on the other side of that boulder or where that water came from. And I think for a designer, the more you can kind of trick the eye or have people be curious about why it's there and what it's done, than seeing everything right off the bat, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it really, especially for people that, maybe don't have a cottage or, their home is their cottage, right? Their home is
Yeah.
their oasis. I think it is a reasonable thing to add to your yard or to your space. A lot, even the front yards. I mean, I'm seeing some people like having water features, smaller water features tucked away.
Yeah.
And there, I know design wise, a lot of people are asking for, love the front porch or want a front
Hmm.
sitting area if they don't like, they're like me and I don't have a front porch, but I have a front sitting
Yeah.
area. And
Yeah.
then it's on my bucket list to have a little water feature up at my front door. But
Nice.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that's something that people don't think about also, right?
Yeah. No, you're right. There's a lot of soothing characteristics to water, and so the sound of gurgling water is attractive. And as well as if you are trying to attract, whether it's birds or other, not I was going to say livestock, but the other animals in the area. It's People have animals. A lot of the water treatments we use are safe for pets, and just for children to splash around in and stuff like that. So having those features can be attractive. And a pondless feature is, again, yeah, safer for a front yard, especially where you're not in control of kind of who's interacting with it. And they might, whether it's dogs walking by that might want to drink on a hot sunny day. And so it's kind of neat to be able to provide that. But then also just the when you're sitting out on your porch or in your patio and having that sound in your ear, it might drown out some of the traffic in your neighborhood, or the neighbor that you might necessarily want to hear all the time. So depending on the feature, it can and it doesn't need to be really big either. Just that constant sound of water
Yes.
interrupts the offsets the sounds that you hear around your neighborhood.
Yeah, so that I was thinking when you were talking, I was thinking about mentioning that. So I have two situations where one client is backs onto a very busy street and we put in a
Okay.
water feature, a pondless water feature, just
Okay.
so that they can, hear water and try to drown out the street behind
Right.
them, right?
Yeah.
And another client we built, I don't know if you saw on Instagram, Matt posted a picture of it yesterday. Quite a
Okay.
large pondless water feature, because the homeowner did want to just block out neighbors
Okay.
and sound, right? Like from other people. So they really wanted to hear the water and they wanted it loud, louder, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
lovely. And it has been successful.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah. I think
fact,
that.
and then it started to run. So last summer, they were away and it started to run dry. And the
Okay.
neighbor texted them. So because the neighbor could hear the sound change. And
Yeah.
so Matt was the clients then texted Matt to say, can you go and, add water to
That is funny.
yeah.
Sure,
So
it provides something for the neighborhood as well. Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind
absolutely.
of neat.
So I think it is
Yeah.
something constructive versus complaining or telling your neighbors to be quiet. I don't know. I
Right.
mean, it is something that is not just for you. It can be for other people.
Yeah.
And it's also visually, there's something about watching water and move and right.
Yeah.
Like love to sit on the porch on a rainy day. And there's something like that.
Mhm.
And I know your Aquascape's little motto on their website is we connect people to water the way nature intended. And I think that's
That's right.
so appropriate, whoever came up with that, because I think that is true. We gravitate to
Yeah.
water. And I really want people to know that they can have a taste of it in their yard and it's affordable.
Yeah. I think that's the important thing is, yeah, that people can realize they can have it. And it's neat. You're right. And you can watch water for hours. I mean, it's one of the reasons, aquariums and other things are in doctors' offices and dentists' offices. You see the bubble forming and you kind of watch where it goes. And the same is true for a stream. Yeah. And you
Mhm.
kind of see it meandering along. Is it going to keep doing that? Or, oh, wow, it shifted here, kind of thing. It is very soothing and very relaxing. It does something for, blood pressure and heart rates and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so it's neat to have water. There's something else I wanted to share, but it'll come back to
It'll
me.
come back to you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, now is it has to be obviously in my case it's been professionally installed, so I've kind of spec'd it and showed clients kind of ideas of what they are looking for, kind of captured their imagination of what they'd like, and then it was professionally installed. So there are authorized installers, right? That can do that
that's right.
for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but there
yeah.
also can be DIY.
That's correct. Yeah, we have both. We have a network of professional landscape companies that have gone through a certification process that we provide, certified aquascape contractors, and they've taken the time and the expertise to add that to their business model, and they provide to their customer. Again, it's not our installers, but their own company, and they've taken the time to take through. We have an Aquascape University that they go through, and plus we require a number of projects that they've done, plus the testimonials from homeowners. And so we've kind of recognized the businesses being professional as well as kind of so but professional on their customer service side and then professional on their installation side too. And so we kind of are happy with the way that has gone. That's been about almost 20 years there for the CAC program as well. So it's kind of neat to see. And it changes periodically as far as what we require. And the bar keeps getting higher as they get better and they, push
Mhm.
themselves. And then as well, kind of push the others and making sure that the new guys that come in don't sully the name as well too. So you kind of make sure that that all works together. But we do have a line of DIY products, as well as we have some homeowners that will try to use the professional grade product, so that what they get is the best of the best. And they'll where a professional might take 3 days to do a project, you might do it over a couple of weeks and that
Mhm.
kind of thing. But if you
Right.
take the time to do it, you can do it well. And we have a number of, you've seen our YouTube channels and other things, and
Mhm.
you can follow along with, Greg Woodstock, the pond guy. Greg's the owner of the company and he has his own YouTube channel,
Oh, okay.
where, he just goes around and meets with CACs, the certified aquascape contractors, and then goes to the projects they've done. So he interacts with the homeowners and hears from them what they're experiencing with the water feature that's been installed. And so it's kind of a fun channel he enjoys doing it. And,
Oh, that's great. Now you used to do build a pond days, but was that just for contractors?
uh, typically it was for contractors, so
Okay.
training them as well. But then we had some of our retailers, different garden centers or
Hmm.
landscape supply, that recognize that there are some DIYers that would like to know how to do it. And so we would put on DIY sorry, yeah, build a pond days. I was trying to remember what
Yeah.
do we call them, but we tend to still do them periodically, and if there's enough interest, and
Mhm.
it's a great way to make sure that what you get is good, as well as sometimes it just shows, oh wow, that's a lot more than I thought, and so I'll hire somebody to do
Yeah,
it.
I bet that happened a lot, right?
That's a fair bit sometimes, but those that are enterprising and able to, they'll take the time and do it, and they do it well. So yeah, it's kind
Hmm.
of seeing the after they buy a kit, or because the neat thing, we have introduced a lot of kits, making it easy so you get everything you need. You're not needing to piece everything together and forgetting a fitting here or the length of
Right.
pipe and that kind of thing. So using the kits is easy, and so then
Hmm.
it or easier, I'll say, and then making sure that you have everything you need and doing it efficiently, and then yeah, sometimes yeah, it leads to someone doing it for you, or yeah, you taking the time to do it well.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I kind of feel that as important as the aquascape, like this all the kit, like all the material is for this construction or the stuff that you don't see is
Yeah,
important, and it's really important that you get quality material. But the aesthetic, like not everybody can do the rocks the right way, and do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
and
The
choosing the
artistry
right
side of
rocks,
it.
right? The
Yeah,
artistry side. So it is artwork, and
yeah,
we've all seen like really not great water features, but like the basin is the same. So really, it
sure.
it does require a bit of finesse and artistry,
Yeah.
also the right materials too, right? Because aren't there some rocks that you shouldn't use, like a type that
That's right. Yeah, more limestone based rocks. If you can avoid them,
okay.
the better off you'd be. Now we do have water treatments and ions and other things to combat. Mainly, you're working against so calcium buildup in a pond leads to more string algae and other unsightly debris and sludge and other things like that that gets encouraged by more calcium rich rock. Now in our areas, that's a lot of the rock we have. So you're either working with more granite or fieldstone and other things like that. So it may
Okay.
not tie in well into a garden, but we do have water treatments that can work with it. So we have a pond and debris clarifier that if you use it, will discourage the growth of algae in a pond or pondless feature. Again, I mentioned the ion gen, which is kind of it's a electronic product that releases a copper ion into the waterway,
Okay.
and it's kind of a neat. The algae ingests the copper in it, and it will kind of destroy itself. So it's a neat way of controlling the algae growth while not
Hmm.
harming the rest of the plants or fish in the pond or
Okay.
pondless feature. So yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
there's ways to combat it, but if you can
Yeah.
avoid it,
Yeah, I
that's
mean, and I think that's important for people to know, like the rocks that are laying around in their yard or that somebody's
may
giving away
not be the
next
best.
door may not be
Yeah.
what you use for the pond, right?
Mhm.
That's important.
Right.
And the other thing that came up a couple years ago, people that have existing ponds that maybe are getting older and
Mhm.
still like the sound of the water and the look of the water, but then also don't want the work. But that is another thing that you can do is we can convert
That's
ponds
right.
to be
Yeah,
pondless, right?
that's right. Yeah, I mean, when the pondless feature was introduced, it was a small pond that just we added larger boulders into the pond area and then gravitated up to smaller rock on top of it, and then pea gravel or gravel, not pea gravel, but smaller gravel on top. So
Hmm.
you kind of relied on the spaces between the larger boulders down below, and that filled that whole thing up with water. Now boulders, when they're in there, will allow for maybe 5 or so gallons of water around it in the space. But now we have a product called the Aqua Blocks that we use. So the
Okay.
Aqua Blocks, I hate calling them milk crates, but they look like milk crates basically, but
Yes.
they do have
Four-sided. Yeah, milk
a,
crates. Yeah.
yeah, a fair bit of structure to them. They will allow for almost 32 pounds per square inch on top of them. So
Mm.
they're load bearing. So then you can just put the rocks right on top of them. And so the basin doesn't need to be as big as it was, so you wouldn't necessarily need that whole pond space. But you can, there's calculations we can work on as far as how much water you need. Like I mentioned at the beginning, just needing double the amount you'd have in the kind of the length and the width of the stream, and then having that in the basin side. So the aqua blocks allow for each one, the large ones are about 32 gallons of space, or one's a measurement of anyway, gallons of water in that space. And so then you fill up around it. So then you could totally, redesign an old pond, or, some people have, those old preformed ponds, you can pull them up and just use rubber liner and repurpose the space for a pondless feature. Yeah, and it eliminates the need for constant maintenance or the looking after it. So
yeah, I think that was really important, because I received a whole bunch of calls for people to say, can you redesign the backyard, now that we want to take out the pond is too much work, and what else am I going to do there? But once I was there during the consultation, and they said, how much they love the sound of it and they love the look of it, they just didn't want the necessary work of the pond, of the water, the standing water. And I said, when I explained to them what we could do as far as making it pondless, they both went for it. Like, they were like, oh my gosh, like, what a great idea. And so I think that's something too for our listeners, that you might have an existing pond, or you may have bought a home. That's happened too, where somebody's just inherited. That happened. I had a client last year where she inherited a pond, kind of a big pond, kind of a very deep pond, very close to her patio doors, and she had a Labrador Retriever. And so she's like, I love the idea of the pond and the sound and being able to see it from my kitchen, and it's so close to the house. But she said the dog's going to be in it, And so we were able to, convert it to be pondless, and kind of elevated it. And so I think that's a really important thing for people to know, that the amount of solutions you have are really, there's a lot.
And some of those fountainscapes can also, if you don't necessarily want the whole pond and waterfall and stream, just filling in that area and still having, whether it's a bubbling rock or a bubbling spillway bowl and basin, or the basalt columns, or there's all kinds. And even some people, they have a really nice rock that was at their cottage or at their grandparents' place or something, and they can be core drilled, and you can incorporate that into a water feature, into a pond, or have it be its own standalone feature. People put, number signs on the side of it or whatever to mark off their location, or at the end of the driveway. There's so many ways of adding water to a property. It's really neat.
A property. That's great. And last but not least, you were mentioning about swimming. What would you call them? Swimming ponds? So kind of like going to the other extremes, recreation ponds. So this is for people who want, maybe like the idea of swimming, but don't really want the pool investment and commitment, and you can have a swimming pond.
Absolutely. The neat thing with it is, for the most part, you're using the pool for 2 or 3 months of the year. And so having a recreation pond, we'll call them recreation ponds that you can swim in, kind of thing. That's what we look at, because you're really enjoying it much more than just swimming. In the fall, in the winter, even if you've got lights and the waterfall working in there, lights in a feature are key anyway, regardless. In the evening time, watching lights interact with water is kind of neat. Just as it shines up at a waterfall, when you look around the property, like up at the trees or at a wall or a fence or something, you'll see the shimmering and the kind of glowing look around. And so having lights on it, and you add in there ice or snow, it's kind of neat to see what a water feature looks like in the wintertime, or in the early winter, or if you're going to leave it running. There are ways, especially a pond. Pondless features with the aqua basin are a little tricky to leave running in the wintertime, but if it's got the actual pondless with aqua blocks and liner and deeper, you can leave those running all winter. But
that's cool.
So there are ways to look at that.
Yeah, then, and that is a depth. So it's a depth thing. Like if it's deeper, and it's a different type of
pump sitting deeper and making sure that it's greater than 1,500, 2,000 gallons an hour, kind of moving that water. But so these recreation ponds, though, a nice deep swimming zone for people to swim in. They're great in the they kind of naturalize the backyard a bit more than a pool does as well. If you've got, lots of evergreens and other gardening going all around, why not make it look like the cottage or a lake, that kind of thing, right? So you just have
Yeah.
your small lake in the backyard instead of a big chlorinated thing. The other thing is, yeah, chlorine and the other unnatural chemicals that we add to pools. Having kind of wetland filtration, or really just more natural bacterias that keep the water clear and clean. And that's a whole other
Yeah.
podcast we could look at there. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I know a lot of people that have these recreation ponds. They will go in, they'll swim in them. They don't necessarily feel like they need a shower the same way you do when you get out of a pool.
Hmm.
So it's kind of neat that way too. But yeah, definitely a trend we see as from people are either replacing or not putting in a pool, but putting in these recreation ponds, which is kind
Okay.
of neat.
Yeah, and as I said at the top of the show, you are the rep for Ontario and Quebec. So if you can do
That's
that in
right.
our climates, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Oh yeah. No, we've got a lot of CACs up here and other
Yeah,
contractors that put in these ponds and pondless features up here in Canada. It does. It's a little different than building in Texas or California for sure, but
yeah.
there are ways to winterize and maintain these features.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you turn a pool? Like if let's say you don't no longer want the pool, can you turn the pool into
Hmm.
a pond?
We have had a lot of people redo that. It does need, depending on whether it's concrete or granite and
Yeah.
other things, but there are ways to convert them into these natural swimming ponds or recreation ponds.
Interesting. I
Yeah,
think that might need its own show because I think that's fascinating. I did
quite
want to touch
possibly.
before we go. I did want to touch on the
Yeah,
water collection part. So, if there's people
yeah,
that have like a wet area or they're having issues with water in their yard or
mhm,
water, coming like because of grading issues or something like that, is a
yeah,
small pondless water feature like a potential solution? Like, could that you be killing kind of two birds with one stone
yeah.
in an area
Totally.
like?
Yeah, there's ways of collecting that water through the downspouts or keeping the water that gets there, or having a swale. It needs to be designed right and well,
Yes,
because you do want it to be filtered, or at least have an area to go if it gets overwhelmed. So if there's too much water,
right.
but then you can do calculations on expected water volume for an area. But
Hmm.
with the use of the aqua blocks, it really does widen the amount of water you can collect, and they can be stacked, and you can, we've had many, some of the projects that have gone in use countless numbers of aqua blocks collecting a ton of water, whether it's to collect it or at least even just creating a larger French drain,
Mm.
allowing the water to kind of collect in an area and then seep down into the aquifers below, as opposed to flooding an area or being overwhelmed and going into a storm sewer or storm
Right.
water management in that way. And then also there's a way you can capture that water, use it as part of a pondless feature or a feature of some
Hmm.
sort, especially for rainwater that's off the rooftop, using the
Hmm.
downspouts, directing it into the your new catchment basin. And you can
Hmm.
either, use rubber liner for that and actually have
Hmm.
a specific size for it that then you repurpose. You can even use
Okay.
that water to water the plants or garden around. And then if that overflows, giving it an area that either seeps down into the ground or then would go to a swale, but I guess you're limiting the amount of water that goes into the stormwater system. So
Right.
municipalities like the idea because then if everybody does that, then there's so little water going into the sometimes overwhelmed
Yeah,
aging
yeah,
infrastructure. Yeah.
yeah, for
So
sure. And I think there's people that have like just muddy yards, like they're wet
oh, okay,
and they
yeah.
never kind of dry out, right? Because of so there might not be pooling water, but I think it's a way to kind of manage
Yeah.
that water better
To manage it really.
to
Yeah.
improve your yard
Yeah.
without doing something, so I feel like you kill two birds with one stone, right? Because you now have something that is aesthetically pleasing and you get to
Aesthetic
hear
and
it and it's beautiful and it's a focal point now, but it's also solving a potential water
That's
issue.
correct.
So, and conservation is also key. I think as we go on in this industry, I think every year it's going to be managing water is going to continue with climate change be a bit of an issue, right? Oh, well, that's great. It's wonderful to learn about the different uses of water features, and for people to know that the maintenance isn't necessarily there. That we can be creative. So I want to thank you
That's
so
right.
much for joining me and talking a bit about the different products and solutions that Aquascape offers. Please check out your website. Right, you've got so
Yeah.
many different features, like you said, the fountainscapes, as well as your YouTube channel.
That's right. Yeah. So if you go to aquascapeinc.com, www.aquascapeinc.com, you'll see a lot of our projects, products. There's galleries and a lot of troubleshooting issues and lots of questions answered, FAQs, frequently asked questions there. And then it'll
Excellent.
link to our YouTube channels there. Yeah.
Okay. And if somebody wanted to find a qualified installer, do you offer, like, you can help
They
connect
can
them as
find that
well?
on the website as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, that's
Great.
great. Well, as we get into spring this time of year and everybody's getting their water features going again, and maybe this will be the
Absolutely.
year I get mine going.
There we go. All right.
Yeah. So thank you very
Th-
much, Ernest, for
Thank
joining
you so
me.
much for the thanks for the opportunity, Joanne. And I look
You're
forward to doing it
welcome.
again.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you everyone for joining us down the garden path. I hope we inspired you to add water to your yard. I hope you see now that it can be a solution for a potential water issue you may have. And we'd love to know if you have any questions. Please reach out to Aquascape or drop me a line on the podcast. And I'll have all the details in our show notes as well. So thank you everybody for having a listen. Bye for now.